Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We've got a bit of a break due to travel. So, what we've done here is we've put together one of our favorite episodes for you to enjoy. We have a total back catalog of well over 70 episodes, and here's one that we love.
Thanks for joining us on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We hope you love this episode as much as we do. And if you have any ideas for future upcoming episodes, let us know. We love to hear from you. Hi, I'm Bonnie, and this is the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter, where we lay the cards on the table and talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So shuffle your deck, pull up a chair, and join us at the tarot table. Welcome to the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today we're talking tarot and astrology. We're going to, this is Peter's element, so we're probably going to be doing more of a question and answer with Peter on his take of how tarot or of how astrology fits into tarot. But for those who are astrology curious, tarot curious, this should be a really entertaining and interesting episode.
Well, we'll
So
try
I
and
guess,
make it try and make it entertaining. So,
well, we like to think that they're entertaining.
yeah,
So
we
let's
do
just go and
totally.
I guess that my first question would be, Peter, how did you get into astrology?
Oh God, I think I've talked before. I got into tarot pretty young, like I'd have been a teenager, and I was already into astrology. So I was kind of fascinated by it. I think I liked the what I thought at the time, and I'd have been like 11 or 12. I liked the blend of what felt like math and science with, sort of a taboo topic. Like I think I've mentioned before, I had a bit of a rebellious streak, and this was a great way to do that. So, like I remember, and I'd love to hear from people who are watching or listening if you remember this I'll call it a toy, but I know it was Coleco, so I think an American tech company. They did what I think was called the astrology computer, but I'm not sure. It was like a red, round, lighty kind of box that made noises. It was built something like the old handheld sports games, but it was like it looked like a birth chart. And you would input birth data and you'd have a companion book. And when you'd input the birth data, I think you'd input even the place and the time and the day based on codes. It would spit back these series of numbers that you would write down, and then you would go into the book and you would read, kind of interpret somebody's chart. And I begged for this thing begged for it for Christmas. And I'd have been around seventh or eighth grade, and my parents got it for me. And like I seem to remember it was not cheap. Like I think I'd mentioned it was like 99.99, so it was like $100, which for my parents at the time would have been a pretty steep gift. So I remember it being like my big gift, and I was everywhere with this thing, like asking every relative, every parent, my parents' friends, for their birth data. And then, like stuff happens and, I probably became less nerdy as I got older or I shifted my interest into music and then the tarot. And I always had a fascination with astrology, but I actually started studying it in 2005 or 2006, right around the time I had sort of built up my tarot practice. And I started studying it with through Ina Stanley's school. At the time was called the Online College of Astrology. So it was a very early online kind of astrology module. And I always felt pretty fascinated with the astrology. I attended an astrology conference in 2008. So I kind of went to Denver, Colorado as a student. But not that I lost interest, but it's pretty complicated. So I know when you say, "Oh, this is my area of domain," it really isn't. I understand it enough to connect it to the tarot, but I really do find it. I find them to be good companions. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But that was my interest in astrology, and like everything else, it sort of ebbed and flowed. I would read some books, but it wasn't really until I started studying it formally. And I only did that. I think I took my last class. Funny enough, probably took my last class in 2008, shortly after meeting my wife, who is a professional astrologer. So I guess I probably figured, okay, I don't have to take classes anymore. I can literally just ask my significant other if I have any astrology questions. But at least that's the, sort of joke or anecdote that I tell. But I really became fascinated with the tarot. What about you? Because I know you have some interest in, you said it's my domain, but I'm not sure that that's quite accurate. What about you when
Well,
in
before
astrology?
I answer this question, I'm curious to know about this toy that you got. Did you find it in the Consumers Distributing catalog?
Yes, that's exact. It
Oh,
was
did
either that or it was the Sears Wish book
you? Mm-hmm.
catalog. It was
I
one
was
or
gonna
the
say, how
other.
does one find a toy like
Totally.
that
That's
unless you're looking in a
yeah.
catalog?
It actually might have been an advertisement in the back of a comic book or something like that.
Mm,
Because I really did like, some of the horror genre comic books.
okay.
That would have been around the same time I read Carrie and The Shining from Stephen King. So
Mm.
I wonder if some of the old Viking paperbacks sometimes had ads in the back. I really can't remember, but that would make total sense. Would have been flipping through the Consumers Distributing catalog or the
That was
Sears
like the best
Christmas
time
book,
of the
right?
year
Oh,
when that came out. Oh,
totally. Yep. No, I totally, yeah, I remember. And that,
yeah.
sorry, this would be something I think for exclusive to Canadian
Okay, yeah.
listeners, right? Where there's a store that we would have where we'd get a catalog and then you'd physically go to the store, I think, and you'd fill out the number in the catalog and they'd go into the back, into the warehouse and they'd bring it out for you. So there was no product at all on the floor of this store, just a whole series of catalogs. I'm remembering this right, aren't I?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. You
yeah.
waited in a line, right? Like
Totally.
that line
Yeah,
formation for your
yeah.
turn, and then they would go and pick up your
Your
product.
stuff.
And
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So yes, so there you go. That's probably where it was.
I
So
was gonna say, I wish I had that toy.
it was great. I'm gonna Google it one of these days, just see, if I can find it. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like doing your birth chart like from such a young age. Like
yeah,
that's brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But
exactly.
I would like to be honest with you, it was even in some of the studies, I found the concept of, and I actually started with kind of modern astrology, and I've kind of shifted my perspective to a more Hellenistic or ancient approach, but I found it really complicated because originally I started learning it was, calculated by hand with an ephemeris and then started to use like software. And I found it much easier when you could just put birth data in and pop the chart up. But, when you're going through an ephemeris and then looking at the birth data and then going at each of the columns and going, okay, where roughly is this planet and this planet at the time of birth? And then, some of the aspects like I found that to be pretty hard. And that might have
Mm.
been the time where I was like, okay, you know what? Might be a little
Tarot
bit.
seems easier
Yeah,
than
tarot now seems comparatively easier, and I know enough about astrology that I can put it into the tarot. So we'll see. How
yeah.
about you? Because you said you had an interest for sure.
I did. So I think astrology was my first love. Astrology and dream interpretation, I guess. I was always like a super vivid dreamer, and I always had books about interpreting your dreams. But I also always had books about astrology since I was very young as well. I was fascinated by astrology, more so about my sign and trying to get to know myself better. So I didn't really understand anything about birth charts. I'm sure the astrology books that I had were very basic in terms of like, oh, if you're a Libra, this is what it means to be a Libra, right?
Yeah.
So I did read those a lot, and of course, being a child of the like 70s and 80s, um, I would read columns, right? Like in Cosmo or whatever. Every time there was an astrology column, I always had to go and look up my astrology. And then, too, as I got older, I would study the astrology of, my boyfriend at the time, or my
Okay.
close friends. And I did notice a pattern that most of my boyfriends were left-handed Geminis, and I married a left-handed Gemini. I think that's pretty funny, but and
It's
I don't
hilarious,
know if that
actually.
was like subconscious or not, but I knew that because I'm a Libra and that's compatible with Gemini. And every time I would meet a Gemini, I'm like, oh, you're my perfect match. So it was definitely more about me being compatible with other people. So I'm not that like I know what all of the signs are. I could tell you a little bit about the sign. I know what the element is that's related to the sign. And actually, tarot helped me with that because prior to studying the tarot, I didn't know what the elemental correspondences were with the signs. But I am a Libra through and through, and that just I always really connected with that. I even in the 90s got a tattoo, a Libra tattoo, because I was that committed to, I wanted a tattoo that represented something that was really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And being a Libra was that. And now I understand that that's because not only is my sun sign Libra, but my rising sign is also Libra. So I think that also magnifies it a bit, which I'm
Mhm.
sure you would know.
Yeah.
So I do have a very limited knowledge about astrology, but I've always been fascinated by
Significant
it.
fascination.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my history with astrology.
But that's, I mean, that the idea of, um, I'll say, limited knowledge, and you probably have more knowledge than most people do, but limited knowledge, but fascination or interest, especially if you've got a connection with the tarot, is a great way to is a great way to get connected. Is to great way to connect the two to kind of put the two together because they play nicely together. I will say that there are some spots where they don't necessarily play nicely together, or somebody, had to force them to play together in the same way, sometimes you had to play with the cousin that you couldn't stand when you got together in a family gathering. Somebody would force you to play together. Sometimes the tarot and astrology play that way, but most of the time they play pretty nicely. So
Very good. So I guess my question then for you, Peter, would
I
be
like this. I'm being interviewed by my
you're
podcast host. This is their, co-host. This
right.
is great.
We're switching things up, people. Okay, so I guess my first thing would be, do you have to be proficient in astrology to read tarot?
No, not at all. I definitely think the tarot stands as a system on its own. Having said that, so I would imagine that many people would read the tarot without ever considering what's happening in astrology. But as you and I have talked, even as we talk about the cards, the different cards, and we interpret them from a slightly different way, just having those conversations or just experiencing someone else's interpretation of a tarot card helps broaden your the foundation of the card's meaning. So when you and I do our draw at the end of the episode, so for those of you who are listening for the first time, stay tuned. Right, we always draw a card at the end of at the end of the episode. Your interpretation helps broaden my future interpretations of that card. So I always think knowledge of astrology helps do the same thing. It helps broaden the understanding of the cards themselves because every card, every 78, like all the 78 cards of a tarot deck have some kind of astrological association. And some of them are really straightforward and kind of, I won't say easy to get because I mean, some you'll know right off the bat as they make sense. But some you just kind of say, okay, well, I know that this is associated with this, and others are almost systemic that you kind of have to understand a little bit about the position of the sun in a birth chart and then figure out, how cards are associated. But they really can help deepen your understanding of each card in the same way numerology would. Understanding the numerological aspects of five or of
Mhm.
nine or of one would help you understand the aces, the fives, and the nine. And each deck would help you understand the magician, help you understand the hierophant, help you understand temperance, which is also a five. You know what I mean? Like help you understand all the nine cards, which would be the moon, which would be the hermit. Like if you're looking at nines, all of those kinds of things help deepen your understanding. So astrology does the same thing. So I think what I've done is said the same thing three times in three different ways, but just so, it, and to summarize it for a fourth time, it really can help bridge your understanding sort of between the two. But like that, remember, astrology in and of itself is about 4,000 years old, right? Like it's an old study of kind of the visible sky, right? How did we connect with what we see in the sky? The tarot, although there were stories that the tarot, predates all kinds of different mythologies, that's not really we're pretty sure that the tarot as a tool might be about 600, maybe 700 years old. And as a divination tool is only a couple of hundred years old, right?
Mhm.
Occultists only started doing that in the 1770s, 1780s, mostly French occultists. So astrology kind of came first, and tarot occultists said, well, how can we take this system that we also know and kind of insert it on top of, or put it on top of our tarot system? How can we take astrology and put it on top of tarot? I don't know. It helps. I will also say this: short answers are not my forte. So if you're going to ask me a question, you have to expect that too. I will very rarely give a short answer. So there you go. I don't know. Does
And
that
that's
answer your question? Like, because you had said, do you have to be proficient? And I guess the short answer is no. The long answer, just rewind for the last 4 minutes or so, and you can listen to my.
Thank you, Peter. From my perspective, because I I wouldn't consider myself proficient with astrology. There are little bits
Yeah,
that I know,
but
but coming
knowledgeable,
in,
right? Yeah.
yeah, coming into the tarot, when I started learning tarot, I didn't use any astrological associations with the tarot. So if you are new to the tarot
Yeah.
and you're not proficient in astrology, you don't have to know it.
Totally. Yeah. And
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
so we're not trying to say that you do,
No,
but I guess
no.
that'll lead me into my next question. So if you are familiar with astrology and you're not familiar with tarot, do you think that your familiarity with astrology will help you learn the tarot?
Yeah. And that I think would be more of a yes than the other way around. Like that would be a yes for sure. And I say that because the the system, so astrology, like and I'll use the general term esoteric societies because that's primarily who put like laid over astrology into the tarot, inserted astrology into the tarot. um they really did try and look at astrological connections. So if you understand the astrology, then it will definitely help you learn the tarot. And I'll give an example. So if you understand, and this is, I'll kind of do a bit of a caveat. I tend to focus on Hellenistic or more of an ancient style of astrology. That's probably through influence of my wife's practice. But even with modern astrology, there there's both, right? There's room for both. There's space for
Mhm.
both in that astrological correspondence or connection to the tarot. But something like the sun. So for those who are not familiar with astrology at all, when you hear something like, "Oh, I'm a Gemini," usually it's because your sun was in the space of the sky called Gemini when you were born. So I'm a Gemini usually means your sun sign is Gemini. Now, there's so much more to astrology than that,
Mhm.
but the sun sign is Gemini means something. It's got a list of things that a Gemini might be. There are things obviously that Bonnie's attracted to, since she said left-handed Geminis, are a type. So she might be better equipped to talk to us about what a Gemini is. But Gemini, the sign Gemini is actually linked to the tarot card, the major arcana tarot card of the lovers. So, for somebody who understands that connection of duality of Gemini or of choice of Gemini, because those are two things that sit inside, the basket of interpretation of a Gemini, can right away see, oh my goodness, that concept of two-ness, the idea that there's usually two main characters at the forefront of a lover's card, and often it is, a lover's card that has an element of duality. It often a card that signifies big choice, which can also sit inside that Gemini window. So for somebody who's like, oh, I understand the idea of Gemini, I understand the sign of Gemini and how to interpret it, can immediately go, oh my goodness, that is connected to the lovers right away without knowing anything of the lovers, can already understand some concepts associated to the lovers card. Another example, and I said Sun and Gemini. So Gemini linked to the Lovers card, the Sun, because the planets also are linked to a card. The Sun is actually linked to the Sun card. Funny enough. So if you understand what the Sun is, that outward self assurance, source of our own inner energy, the light that we shine out to somebody else, that is very much what the Sun is like in astrology, the idea of our true self shining forward. If we were like, oh, well, I understand the Sun in astrology, why don't I take a look at the Sun in the tarot? You'd be like, if you describe what the Sun is from an astrological perspective, you'd be coming pretty close to describing what the Sun is from a tarot perspective. So they really can, at times, and I'll say at most times, lend themselves really well together. And somebody who knows astrology well would really have a strong basis to start to understand the tarot. And then what they'd have to do is understand the structure of the tarot, that it's a deck and that, it's got this section and this section and these are the suits and all of that kind of stuff. But it definitely would help, definitely give you a foothold in your understanding. So long answer already done. Short answer, does astrology help you understand the tarot? Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm actually going to uh, ask you the opposite. So, like, from my
Right.
perspective, if you understand the tarot and you want to start learning astrology, does it go that way as well? So, would I would that help me understand astrology better if I have a tarot background?
Yeah. So I think it will definitely help you understand elements of it better.
Okay.
And funny, I said the word elements of it better because, as an example, right, when we talk about some aspects of astrology, we have the 12 signs that most people are familiar with. You talked about, your sun being in Libra, and most people say, gee, I'm a Scorpio, I'm a Sag, I'm, Sagittarius, I'm Aquarius. Those are examples of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And every sign is actually associated with an element in the same way every suit is associated
Mm.
with an element. So I always think, if you understand the idea of the elements in the tarot, for example, let's, look at Earth. So I know that Earth is associated to the sign of Pentacles. Well, in astrology, there are three signs that are also associated with the Earth. So Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. I'm like, you see that? How I had to go roll into the back of my head. And all of those signs in some way have those earth-like qualities, that concept of
Mm.
groundedness, that concept of slow moving,
Okay.
focuses on resources, those kinds of things that would be associated with the suit of pentacles would overlap with the three signs that are earth signs. And then, of course, there are three water signs, or three air signs, there are three fire signs. So just understanding the link between elements in the tarot and elements in astrology would be very helpful, right? And then from a more detailed perspective, you take a look at the 22 major arcana cards, and every one of them is associated to either a planet or a sign. Now, in
Mm.
ancient astrology, they're associate to the links in ancient astrology, and in a lot of ways to the links in the original kind of esoteric societies in the 1780s, which would predate the discovery of Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. So we would talk about the seven
Mm.
visible planets. So Saturn would be the end of our planets that are visible with our eyes, with no implement. Not saying that planets, they've always been there. We just haven't seen them because we didn't have the technology to see them. Early esoteric societies would have talked about linking, there would have been an esoteric Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So they would be linked. The cards that became linked to them are linked to elements as well. But there's always a link. There's always a link. So if you understand the tarot, and I think of, well, take the death card, for example. And, if you understand the death card quite well, all it would take is somebody saying, well, the death card is linked to Scorpio, that Scorpio and the death card are actually in correspondence, astrology versus tarot. You could know nothing about what the sign of Scorpio is like from a general perspective. And if you described elements of the death card, there would be some things that would overlap with your
Mm.
knowledge of Scorpio. So this is where I say, the system itself, like regardless of whether you start with astrology, you start with tarot, they really can help. It can help you learn. So short answer, will my knowledge of tarot help me learn astrology? Short answer is yes. Long
Yes.
answer is, I think
I
that's
love
my
that.
like, I think that's got to be my, almost 30 years working in education where it's that idea of providing an awful lot of detail. But I mean, I
Well,
my passion, because I do work with astrology and the tarot, so I do overlap the two systems, particularly around timing, and definitely sometimes around work in my own work, my own personal work, and work with clients. I definitely think it is a valuable tool to help.
mhm.
I'll do a plug for a friend's book. Karine Kenner wrote a book called Tarot and Astrology that is phenomenal. I think it's available now. I think it might be available through Amazon and or Indigo here if you're in Canada, but I think it's available through her website, which is karinekenner.com. It is a phenomenal book. Like it's a really good sort of almost primer if you're looking going, oh, I understand tarot, or oh, I understand astrology. I'd like to blend both. So I'll do an unsolicited plug for a resource if you're looking to start. So the other thing I'll do is I'll do my own plug because I've got two courses that for me, the detailed look I have on the minor arcana and the major arcana, we touch on it a little bit in the beginner's course, but the two courses on the minor arcana and the major arcana have some significant pieces that talk about how astrology links to the tarot. So I won't go into a ton of detail here, only because we do a podcast that sits somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour and a bit. We'd be going into way more detail. So if you're curious, if you're like, oh my goodness, this is really curious, then I would, ask you go and check out my course.
Mhm.
I have the Learn the Tarot, the Minor Arcana, Learn the Tarot, the Major Arcana, and there's at least one lesson in each course, but there's actually multiple lessons that certainly touch on the astrological links that are there because they can get pretty detailed, and I won't go
Mhm.
into that level of detail as we're talking. So there you go, unsolicited plug and personal plug.
Yes.
So,
And Peter's courses are awesome. So if you have the chance to check them out,
oh, thank
I
you.
can vouch for them
Thank
because
you.
they're amazing.
Thank you. That's true. Yes, you can, but thank you. I appreciate that. So,
Okay, so we may have touched on this. Well, you may have touched on this a little bit, but then how does astrology fit in with the tarot?
okay. Um, so in a lot of ways, so I'll start off by saying in a lot of ways. I'll start with the short answer, right? A lot of ways. So astrology is based on a system that includes, signs, it
Mhm.
includes planets. Um, it includes a chart, and a chart is pretty much just a 360-degree map of the sky at any point in time. People talk about a birth chart, which is, well, what did the sky look like at 360 degrees? So that's horizon to horizon, sky you can see, horizon to horizon underneath you, sky you can't see, 360 degrees. Take a snapshot of that, tells you where things are in the sky at a particular moment. Birth chart's the moment you were born, event chart, the moment of an event,
Okay.
all of those kinds of things. So that's kind of the starting point. And then, as we know, right, there are planets in the sky at that time, and they're all somewhere in the sky. And what astrology does is it takes the sky and it divides it up into 12 sections of 30
Are those
degrees.
houses?
Those are actually the signs
Oh,
themselves.
the
So
signs.
the
Sorry.
signs,
Okay.
right? So the signs are a 30-degree section of the sky. So,
Mhm.
for example, when you talked about your sun being in Libra, all that means is that the sun on the moment you were born was in the section of the sky an astrologer would call Libra. Now, it's
Okay.
not the same as it's based on, named from the constellation itself, but it's not the same as it was inside the constellation of Libra. It actually wasn't. The sky shifted a little bit, which has kind of caused the signs to move from when astrology started 400 years ago or 4,000 years ago. But it doesn't matter because the constellations are not an equal 30-degree size. Like some are massive and some are small. All it says is the sun was in Libra, in the section of the sky called Libra, when you were born. So your
Okay.
sun is in Libra. But
Okay.
everything else in the sky, Mars, the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, like everything was somewhere in the sky,
Right.
as was the ascendant, which is the horizon line at the kind of rising sign, and then the descendant, which is sort of the horizon line at the other end of the sky. And all of those are points on a chart that people take a look at. And many of the or all of the planets, all of the signs, all connect in some way, somewhere to the tarot. So, and then, so just to give examples, right? The magician, the high priestess, the emperor, the empress, all connected to either planets or signs. So the magician connected to Mercury. The high priestess, I think I mentioned before, is connected to the moon. The empress is connected to Venus. And then, and so forth and so on. So we have like every card has a connection of some kind. Every planet
Mhm.
has a connection to a card. And then every
Okay.
sign has a connection as well. Um, every sign has a connection as well. So Aries is connected to the Emperor, Taurus is connected to the Hierophant. I had mentioned before, Gemini as a sign is connected to the Lovers, Cancer is connected to the Chariot. You mentioned Libra, Libra is connected to
Justice.
Justice, right? So I have a fair amount of Scorpio in my chart connected to the Death card. So every sign is also connected to a card in the major arcana. So the 22 cards of the major
Mhm.
arcana from the Fool to the World are connected in some way to a sign or to a planet. Some of the
Okay.
cards are also connected to elements from an ancient astrology perspective. So, even that way, like if we talk about the four elements that are connected to signs, we also have connections to elements in the tarot. And this is kind of the system I follow. So, the element of fire is connected to the major arcana card Judgment. The element of air is
Mm.
connected to the major arcana of the Fool. The element of water is connected to the Hanged Man. The element of earth is connected to the World card. Um, yeah, so like when you talk about how it's connected in many, many ways. Even the minor arcana, and this one is a little bit harder because like I'll just kind of quickly sort of talk about it. Said, the sky is connected into 12 sections of 30 degrees. Each sign is 30 degrees, and each sign is connected even is divided even further into three different sections, which are called decans. So a decan is a section of 10 degrees, and each decan is associated to the card of the minor arcana based on whether it's a sign that is either cardinal, fixed, or mutable, which is sort of the first sign of a season, second sign of a season, third sign of a season, and then also connected to an element. So if it's a sign that is an earth sign, then the minor arcana card is connected to one of the three earth signs. If it's an element that is water, cups, for example, then the minor arcana cards of the cups are connected to one of the signs that is a water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. So the connections are really intricate. Um, they sound more complicated than they are. And I always suggest to people start with the easy kind of one-on-one or one-to-one connections,
Mm.
which exist in the minor arcana. 22 cards, 22 associations. Stop
The
there.
major, you mean?
Sorry, the major arcana. Thank you. So the 22 cards of the major arcana. And then, because I was thinking a step ahead, if you want to go into greater detail, then start looking at the connections that it makes with the minor
Mhm.
arcana, because the minor arcana cards make connections. The aces make a particular seasonal connection. 2 to 10 make a much more specific connection. And then the court cards make a couple of connections. They make connections through element, they make connection through position in the sky. But they and it's not that hard to learn once you understand what the system is. Um, and when we do our card draw, I'll try if I draw a card from the minor arcana, I'll try and kind of talk my way through how I'm thinking about where the astrology happens to be, and then maybe talk a little bit about what that interpretation might look like. So yeah, so you find it primarily planets and signs in the major arcana. That's
Okay.
the primary link. The elements, which exist both in astrology and in tarot, are found in a couple of places. There are some major arcana cards that do double duty with their links to the element, but the biggest link to the elements of astrology are in the suits of the tarot, as well as in the court cards of the tarot. So I don't.
Wow. So
Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes total sense. It's I sort of understand my particular cards. If
Yeah.
I were to have to do that for somebody else, I wouldn't have any idea how to do that
Well,
without, further study or some guidance. But I guess one question I have, and I think you've cleared that up for me because I was confused about that. So in the major arcana, if you can one card be related to a planet and a sign, or they're totally separate? So,
there.
like,
Sorry,
you're
go ahead.
either a planet or you're a sign
Yeah. So for most cards, you are either a planet or a sign
in the major.
in
Okay.
the major arcana. Now, so I'm going to say, as a general rule, that's the case.
Okay.
If you're following a traditional approach, then there are some cards that do a little bit of double duty. The
Okay.
Earth is one example where the world is one example, where the world is associated to both an element, Earth, and to a planet, Saturn. No
Okay.
card is linked to a sign and a planet. No, you're either a
Okay.
planet or you're a sign.
That makes sense because I was always like, oh, like I think that confused me a little bit because I know like the Emperor and Aries, and
Yeah,
there's some of them that are just really easy for me to sort of
yeah,
relate. But then with the planet, I'm not so familiar with the planets, I guess, and maybe that was throwing me off.
yeah,
So that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense
Well, and
about
and there are 10
right.
planets, right? There, so we talk about the like so moon, sun, and then we kind of go
Mhm.
Mercury all the way up to Pluto. That's 10 planets. There are 12 signs. Put
And
10 and
then
12 together, and you have
22,
22, right? And how many major arcana cards do we have? Right. 22.
22.
Right. So, I mean, that's what I mean, where we talk about the idea that sometimes the system fits together nicely. Overall, this fits together really nicely. And I think it's one of the reasons why, with the discovery of Pluto in, was it 1920, 1930, I think, um, esoteric societies, and I think of Paul Foster Case as probably sort of the biggie, started attributing modern planets to the cards. So when I talked about the
Okay.
idea of having cards linked to elements, that is kind of an old system. You've got some cards that are now linked to planets. So judgment, when I said, I would link judgment to the element of fire, the modern link would be judgment to the planet Pluto. Now,
Mm,
esoteric societies in the 1880s or 1890s couldn't link the judgment card to Pluto because they didn't know Pluto was there, right?
right.
So, it's kind of nice with the discovery of Pluto. And I know Pluto is kind of a planet, not a planet, or a planet. What is it? It's still there from an astrological perspective. Um, so you got those 10 planets with 12 signs, and they really link nicely to 22 signs in the major arcana. So, yeah, planet. So, again, short answer, right? Uh, are they linked with a planet or a sign and not both? And the short answer to that is yes, they are.
Right. Not linked. Or they are all linked, but not overlapping.
Yes, correct. All linked and overlapping. And usually, with the planets, they can kind of be sequential, except for a few, oddities
Mhm.
that insert. With the signs, they kind of go all over the place. But
And I think that's why I was confused a little bit.
yeah, sorry, other way around. The signs are kind of sequential. The planets sort of go all over the
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Well, thank you for teaching me that.
place.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go into our
our
card pull?
our draw, no. I mean, I would tell people that I think it's a fascinating way to be able to broaden your understanding of each card. If I was going to give anyone guidance around where to start, I would start with the major arcana. I would start with the clear links of the 22 cards and look at the 22 planets, include the modern connections, but also keep in mind that, although they're all kind of modern constructs, like the esoteric connections to the tarot, we're talking what, 1780. So what is that? Like 250 years. That the modern connections are even less than that. They would be, basically 100 years old. So, we are talking about a system of divination or connection that existed without those three planets for quite some time, with the three planets being added. But they do make a nice starting point. And then if you're like, wow, this actually helps me out, then start slowly exploring the connections that exist in the minor arcana. But I would wholeheartedly tell you that if you really are looking to deepen your knowledge, that don't shy away from it. It may sound complicated. I might have made it even sound more complicated than it should. But those major arcana connections can be quite easy. It's just simply remembering, okay, this one is connected to this one, and a lot of them make sense. The tower is connected to Mars. God of War connected to the Tower of Destruction. Makes complete sense. Somebody would say, death connected to Scorpio makes complete sense. The sun connected to the sun makes complete sense.
Oh, I just
Oh,
got the connection. Okay,
right?
literally, I just had a moment like Scorpio and the death card because scorpions can kill you. Is that the
Sure. But
connection?
but
Not that
also
we're
the link,
talking about a literal death in
yeah,
the death card, but like an
an
ending
ending,
or
right? And
release. Yeah,
and those
okay,
ideas
okay.
of release, those ideas of and the same thing with that concept of not death and depth. They are both, though they can be certainly concepts that are linked to Scorpio. If you looked at, and I don't, but if you looked at modern astrology, the Scorpio link would be to this link of the eighth house, which would also be a link to that concept of death and endings as well. So there, like I said, there are all kinds of ways to be able to help and enhance the layers through which you would look at the tarot through the lens of astrology for sure. Right. And some, I always think the moon, you would think, oh, the moon's associated to the moon. No, it's not. The moon is associated to the high priestess, but that makes perfect sense as well if we understand the high priestess and then we understand the role that the moon plays
Mhm.
in astrology. That's a pretty strong connection. It's not connected by name. The card of the moon is connected to Pisces, which though also makes sense if you understand Pisces. So I think of somebody who's in astrology and going, oh, I understand Pisces quite well. If I was saying, okay, take your knowledge of Pisces and move it over and overlap it with the moon card in the tarot, you'd start to get a really good basis for the understanding of what the moon card happens to be. It's quite dreamy. It has an element of wishy-washiness to it, that there's no real strength or foundation, that there's that water flowing. Again, there's some depth to it. All of those things could describe the moon card and describe Pisces. So having an
And you
understanding
just
of one
and you
helps,
just described my moon in Pisces.
right?
Little wishy-washy.
That's
Thanks, Peter.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
calling
No
me
worries.
out.
No worries. I didn't say a word, actually. I didn't say a word. I just used it as an example.
Well, you know what is funny? Because I'm so closely tied to being a Libra. And I before just probably within the last year, I downloaded a chart and then sort of tried to get a little bit
Yeah,
familiar with my chart and then realized I had my moon was in Pisces. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because I'm really emotional. I cry a lot, right? Like all these things, which aren't necessarily related, I think, to the sign of like to that
correct.
air sign.
Correct.
And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me that I have that connection. And,
Yeah.
so
Well,
anyway.
and I'll borrow a concept from my wife's teachings, and the idea that when you take a look at your birth chart, and I know everybody's familiar with their sun sign, and a lot of people familiar with their rising sign, which is the sign that was on the horizon, on the sunrise horizon. So I guess the left horizon or the western horizon, sorry, Eastern Horizon. The Eastern Horizon. This is why sometimes it would mess me up because I'm left-handed.
Oh, you're left-handed,
I'm a lefty, not a Gemini.
not a
I'm a lefty,
Gemini.
right? So not fitting into your typecast, but I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
left-handed. I get so confused with directions. So
Mhm.
I'm still somebody who has to stand in front of a stove and go, okay, it's which burner is which, left side, right side. If somebody also says, like I go to yoga class and they say, okay, you got to put your left, move your left hand over to your left foot, and I got to look around for visual cues. And it never helps because the yoga teacher is usually facing us in a mirror way. So like I have to think left and right. So sometimes the spatial concept of astrology was where I would struggle. But
Mhm.
all that to say, remember that when you get your birth chart, it is telling you where multiple things in the sky are. So you
Mhm.
know where your sun is, and you know
Mhm.
where your moon might be, and you know where your rising sign or where the horizon was. But Mars was somewhere in the sky, Venus was somewhere in the sky, Saturn was somewhere in the sky, Jupiter was like they all were somewhere in the sky.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
were all likely, well, not all likely, they were absolutely in other sections of the sky, right? Because we rarely have the planets all clumped up in the same section of the sky. We would have some, but
Right.
right. So, and this is for those of you who are interested in astrology and want to make the link to the tarot and know your birth chart. Sometimes a great exercise to do is to start kind of one at a time and taking a look at the tarot cards that associate with your birth chart. So if you know your chart and you know, for example, that your sun is in Sagittarius, then take the card associated with the sun, which is the sun card, take the card associated with Sagittarius, which is the temperance card, and take a look at both and compare what having your sun in Sag how it compares to having the sun card and the temperance card kind of together, and what would that combined
Mhm.
interpretation look like. And as you start to become familiar, you can do the same thing. Well, I have Mars in Scorpio. Well, okay, so Mars is represented by the death, or sorry, Mars is represented by the Tower card. Scorpio is represented by the death card. If I have Mars in Scorpio, and that's a pretty intense energy, what would happen if I had the death card and the Tower card combined together? Well, also pretty intense energy. Do you know what I mean? So as you start to kind of unravel the connections between astrology and tarot, and you start to also understand your birth chart and where pieces of astrology sit, you can start to play a little bit with the cards and your birth chart. So I've done that before where I literally lay out the tarot cards of my birth chart on a circle on the floor. We used to have a circular rug that I would use, and it'd be like, okay, I know where I know where Scorpio sits. I know what planets are in there. Let me kind of lay those out. And it can be a great learning tool. So great learning tool.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I do that with numerology,
Right.
like with my numbers. I use the tarot and spread it out that way, but I haven't done that with astrology. So I think that might be in my future that I would like to
Yeah.
understand that a little bit more
Yep. And
because,
yeah, your birth chart's
yeah,
easy to
so,
get to. There's, all kinds of things, astro.com. You just put your data in and out comes your birth chart. Pretty easy.
mhm, mhm.
Mm.
Thank you, Peter. I
Yeah.
learned so much today.
Good. Well, I hope people did. If you have questions, as always, put them in the comment section. We usually monitor our comments, whether you're here on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and then we'll try and respond as best we can. Yeah, and keep in mind too, if you're looking to go deep, there are all kinds of online resources. But I'd ask you if you're here and listening, go
Yeah,
and,
check
and
out
yeah,
Peter's, check out his
go
classes
and check out the classes. So, all
for
right,
sure.
what are we
Okay,
gonna?
you want to pull a card?
Sure, and I'll try and connect. I'll try
Okay.
and connect.
I'm not going to.
Okay. Well, I'll try as well and connect if you like when you pull a card, I'll try and do.
Okay, yeah,
You
you
might
can
again
try to
watch the
connect with
wheels go,
me.
especially if it's a minor arcana card. You
Hmm.
want me to
Hmm.
start?
Sure.
Okay. I guess I should. I'm using Sasha Graham's The Darkwood Tarot today, yes.
I
So
love that deck.
well, and we're kind of approaching Samhain or Halloween season, so it I think it has that kind of theme. I don't have a
Hmm.
ton of theme decks, but I've got a couple that would be in that genre, so I might as well use them. All right, just gonna. Okay.
We need shuffling music, Peter.
We do,
Can you
right?
get on
Okay,
that,
I
please?
will.
Peter's
I
our
will.
editor.
I will. I'll do the editing, and maybe I'll try. Maybe I'll try and write. Give me a couple weeks, and I'll try and write a little shuffling a little shuffling music. So I did do the shuffling. I did a card, and I did draw a minor arcana card. So I drew the
Okay.
Six of Pentacles.
Ah,
Now,
okay.
it's really interesting. Now, again, we talk about the idea of learning, interpreting the from an artist's perspective, um, because I look at this card and they're actually because the character itself, because the Darkwood um, tarot, my understanding is it really is kind of a focus on sort of the darker side of interpretation, or I think what Sasha Graham might call sort of shadow or shadow work. And I think the images represent that. So I always go back to the Rider Waite, which is often a card that almost exudes generosity, but it does it from a power imbalance. There's somebody who looks like they have resources that are providing resources to people who may not. And this card has the same kind of theme. So those of you who are watching
Mm,
on YouTube, you can see the image. For those who are not, the person who is handing things out, and these may be coins, they may be seeds, looks like a combination of a traditional witch slash devil. So I look at it and I can see a horned character, red face, and the grin looks somewhat malicious. So I don't know. So I'm looking at this card. I draw the Six of Pentacles, and I'm thinking right away, there is a concept of give and take. So, sixes are about balance and harmony. That's kind of, what they can often focus on. And yet, in this card, in the Six of Pentacles, there is an imbalance and what might be a disharmony. Now, the imbalance or the disharmony, that, kind of malicious nature, is prominent in this version of the card. It isn't so prominent in the Rider-Waite-Smith, although this one is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith. So I wonder if the Six of Pentacles coming from this deck might be the idea of, I'm generously providing resources to somebody who might need them, or I'm receiving resources from somebody who is providing me with support. So the first thing I would think of is, well, where am I in this relationship? Am I receiving support from somewhere, or am I giving support from somewhere? I might also reflect on the question, what is the intention of the support that's being provided? So if
mhm,
I'm giving the support, am I giving the support from a perspective of unconditional provision of support? Do I have an altruistic motive, or do I have um, a non do I have an ulterior motive? Is this ego driven, for example? Am I given so that the response can be, well, I'm giving so that I can receive something, or I'm giving so that I can be seen to give. So this
mhm,
might be a call to, well, why am I providing this resource? Why am I providing someone with what they need? If I'm at the other end of the equation, then the Six of Pentacles sometimes says, I'm receiving support from someone. What is the intent of the support that I'm receiving? Am I receiving it from the perspective of, of good-natured, unconditional support? Or is there kind of a quid pro quo there? Am I receiving something with the intent that the giver, is looking for something in return? Um, so, that's sometimes it's, this is a card that sometimes prompts some reflective questions. It might even be something as simple as, what am I giving and in what area am I giving, or what am I receiving and in what area am I receiving? And then I think, well, this is the Six of Pentacles as well. So start reflecting on what I'm either giving or receiving in the pentacle areas of our lives. So how am I supporting, or how am I being supported in my daily routine, in my work, in my provision of resources, health, and
mhm.
so forth and so on. So, and then, okay, I'll try and link the astrology. So I'm gonna try not to get super confusing, but so I'll start with the element. So we
Okay.
have we have pentacles, which is, and I'll ask you. So what, Bonnie? What's pentacles is what element?
Earth.
Earth, right? So
And I'm
right,
wearing red, so there you
right,
go.
right away we know that it is linked to either Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn. Like, because those are the three Earth signs in the zodiac. So in this card is linked to one of those three signs. So right away, through series of elimination, we've eliminated 9 of the 12 signs, and we've got 3. The way the minors are linked is through what's called modality. So each of the signs is either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. And all that means is it the first sign in a particular season? So I'll give you an example. Aries, first sign of northern spring. Aries, fire sign. Aries, cardinal sign, because cardinals come first. So
Okay.
the Aries sign is cardinal and fire. And it is the only cardinal fire sign in the zodiac. If we looked at the next sign, which is Taurus, Taurus is an earth sign. It's in the middle of a season. For us, it's in the middle of northern spring. Fixed signs are the middle sign in a season. Taurus is an earth sign. Taurus is fixed earth.
Oh.
Gemini,
Hmm.
last sign in spring. Gemini is an air sign.
Okay.
Gemini is mutable because mutable signs are the modality that we attach to the last sign of a season. Gemini is the only sign that is both mutable and air. Gemini is mutable air. The numbers of the minor arcana fit that same system. 2, 3, 4, cardinal. 5, 6, 7, fixed. 8, 9, 10, mutable. So whenever you see a 2 or 3 or a 4, you know it's going to be attributed to a mutable sign. Then all you got to think of is, okay, well, so the 2, 3, 4 of wands, 2, 3, 4 of pentacles, 2, 3, 4 of cups. So then it's either mutable fire, mutable air, mutable water, and it can only find itself in one sign. I had said that 5, 6, 7 are fixed. Pentacles are earth. There is only one fixed earth sign. It's
Okay, let
Taurus.
me do the math.
All right, you do it.
Okay, fixed is the last,
Fixed is the middle.
fixed is the middle.
Pentacles is
Okay,
earth.
okay. And we have, so Earth is Taurus,
Yes?
Virgo,
Yep.
and
You
Capricorn.
got it. Which
I'm
one
going to
is the
go
one that sits in the middle of the season?
Capricorn.
So then I would say, so what are
Is
the
that right?
dates? Well, what are the dates for Capricorn? Roughly.
Capricorn would be 5, 6, 7.
No, so because Capricorn is the start
Oh,
of,
so I'm thinking in the minors. Okay, sorry. The dates of Capricorn?
yeah, the dates of Capricorn, because that's going to tell
Okay,
you.
so the dates of Capricorn are like the end of December.
Right,
So like whatever 21,
right.
22, 23 to the uh
Yeah, the same, right?
middle, yeah,
20
to of February or of
of January.
January.
Right. So my question
And
would
that's
be
is that not the, oh no, that's the beginning.
the
Is that the
beginning of
beginning of winter?
winter for us, right? So if it's the
Okay, so
beginning of winter, beginning is a cardinal sign. So
okay, so then is it Taurus?
right, because
Okay.
Taurus is the middle of spring for us.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
It's
I
middle
have
of
okay.
autumn for our Australian, listeners, but it's the middle. It doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
still
no, because I was
yeah,
thinking December is
yeah,
winter, but December it's the end
yeah,
of December is
yeah,
when winter
yeah.
starts. Okay, so
Not
yes.
here. October is winter, but
Right.
only because the snow and the cold. Yeah. So
Yes,
you're right. So
exactly. Okay, it's
Taurus is
Taurus.
fixed Earth, right?
Okay.
So the Six of Pentacles is linked,
Yes.
has a Taurus link. And I won't it because 5, 6, and 7 are three cards that sit in Taurus. The Six of Pentacles would sit inside the middle of the sign of Taurus. So it would be the section of Taurus that is kind of the middle of the pie. The 5 of Pentacles would be the first section, the first 10 degrees of Taurus. The 6, which I just drew, is the middle section of Taurus. And the 7 is actually the last section of Taurus. That's how you link the card. So if I looked at this and I thought, okay, well, the 6 of Pentacles also has a Taurus energy to it, and it's a fixed earth energy to it, I would think, well, is there a question of stuckness, or again, lack of movement with the resources? Does this represent a situation where I'm called upon to give resources, but I'm reluctant to do so? Or is it a
Mm.
situation where I need resources, but I'm reluctant to ask? Am I sitting inside that fixed space? Now, this is what I
Stubborn.
mean. I'm glad we were able to
The
kind of
stubborn
work it out,
Taurus.
right? Because exactly, is there that stubborn, you got it, right? So just
I'm
understanding a
surrounded
little
by
bit.
Tauruses. I
So
have many, many close family members that are Taurus.
this is where that that interpretation can be enhanced a little bit. And I'm glad we
Mm.
worked that out because, as you start to think about, because it's, the first kind of go at it, you're like, okay, well, which one starts a season? And if you understand the dates, then, that first month, that first kind of 30 days is the start of a season. All right. So, what about you? What would you add to the Six of Pentacles that I just drew?
I Not much really, Peter. It is really the energy of giving and receiving and where you sit in that spectrum. So if this card comes up for myself, if it comes up for somebody that I'm working with, then I will ask them, like, are you like, I think, and I'm going to generalize here, but for a lot of women, it's hard for us to receive. We're often givers and we give a lot. And then when it's time for us to receive or it's time for us to ask for support, that's really difficult to do. So quite often for me, it's the, yeah, I have no problems giving, but it's hard for me to receive. So wherever you sit in that spectrum, like if you are needing support, how can you ask for that? Like knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable, knowing that people like to support you. Like if somebody's telling you like, hey, do you need help with something? A lot of times they're like, no, no, I'm good. I'm good. But people feel good when they help, right? So that card is really about balance, which if you think about the sixes, a lot of times that is a card about balance. So if you're allowing somebody to help you, you're also helping them because they're happy to do that. And it's also too about I love what you said about that card. Quite often in that deck, I have that deck as well. I absolutely love it. It kind of brings up the shadow side of the six. Is like, are you giving to be noted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what are your motivations behind giving? Like if you're giving something, are you expecting something in return? Which is quite the opposite of the energy of the Six of Pentacles, right?
Right.
It's this idea of giving without expecting anything in return. If you have the resources to give, and it doesn't have to be financial, it could be time, it could be knowledge, so many different things. It could even be like, wow, I have a lot of items in my home. I'm going to be donating these items and I'm okay to do that. I'm not expecting anything in return for that. So I think that card really brings up where you sit on that spectrum and what are your motivations behind either being too prideful to ask for help or, if that's your situation, how can you let that go so that you can receive the help that you're needing? So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
mhm.
Yeah. It was good. Yeah. It was a good card draw, especially from a different deck because I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah. That image is like, oh, it's got that dark shadow side. So,
Mhm, mhm.
all right.
Yes.
How about you? What deck have you got?
Okay. So we're still in this season of almost Halloween. So I'm going to continue with my Halloween decks because I have quite a few, and we talked in a previous episode
Yeah.
how much I love Halloween.
Yeah.
So I'm using the Halloween Tarot by Kipling West, and while you were shuffling, I was shuffling, and I pulled a card. And I say this all the time in tarot is that you can't make like I can't plan any of this stuff. Like I can't even try to make this up. So the card that I pulled is really funny and very not funny, haha, but funny peculiar in the sense that it ties in exactly with what we're talking about today with astrology and tarot
Oh, yeah.
because it is okay. So
You didn't pull justice, did you?
no, but I pulled the Queen of
Oh, the Queen.
Bats,
Okay. Okay.
and the bats in this deck are the element of sword or
Swords.
the
Okay.
suit of swords,
Okay.
element of air.
Yep.
And what I know about myself in the tarot is that I am represented by the Queen of Swords,
Yep.
which in this deck is the Queen of Bats. So I get to talk about myself a little bit here. And then, Peter, I'm sure you can offer a lot more information because so this is maybe you can help me. We're going to sort of do like our own little reading,
Okay.
going a little bit deeper here since
Okay.
this is like near and dear to
Yep.
me. But so I'll talk a little bit about what I think about the Queen of Bats, the Queen
Mhm.
of Swords. So she is a leader. She is courageous. She's an excellent communicator. She's very wise. So I would say of all of the queens, she's probably the wisest queen and the one who has the most courage and strength. She can sometimes feel a little bit, I guess sometimes people portray her as a little bit hard. Sometimes she can have like a really sharp tongue when she communicates. But the thing I get from this queen is that she helps you to speak your truth and stand your ground and be true to who you are,
Yes.
but doing that in the most compassionate way. So I really love this queen, but I feel like I'm sort of on the shadow side of this queen because I do embody a lot, like, I love to read and I love to learn. So I think the knowledge is there for me, but what I lack is the confidence or the bravery of this queen to just speak her truth and be who she is and sort of stand in her power. So if this is my card, right, from an astrological perspective, like what would that tell me,
Wow.
or would do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
how can I embody this card more if she's supposed to be representing me? Like I want to be the queen of wands, but I'm
Right.
the queen of
Well, and because so I guess
I don't know,
from
there's a
that
lot there.
perspective, that well, that so the because I don't want to get into the um how we calculate, because the courts are
Right.
a little bit more complicated, but
Yeah.
um because they have both a kind of a forward facing side, and they do have a shadow side, which is usually part of the sign, the astrological sign that precedes the sign in the zodiac.
Okay.
So for you, and you know that this sign for you is associated with the sign of Libra because of where your sun is. What's
Yes.
the sign? I won't. Maybe I shouldn't do the quiz
No,
bomb.
you can test me. It's
So the
Virgo.
sign that
The
comes
what
right,
the
the
sign that
sign that
comes
comes
before?
beforehand is Virgo. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So the Queen of Swords has a real foundation in kind of that water air combination. The Queen is the water element, Swords is that air element. And where she sometimes lacks in resources from the esoteric connection with the courts in astrology is in the sign that just precedes it, in that earth element. So it was so funny when
Mm.
you said, that my question is to stand my ground, or my shat, like I sometimes don't stand my ground. That is that earth element that is sometimes the representation of the challenge that exists inside the Queen of Swords, because the Queen wants to be compassionate. She is absolutely decisive as the Queen of Swords. She wants to be compassionate and empathetic because she's a queen. She sits in that water. And where the challenge sits is in that kind of what's called the shadow decan. The decan is a 10-degree section. So it's that last section of Virgo that really does cause some of the challenges for the Queen of Swords. So when you
Wow.
talked about, yeah, I really do, because that queen has sometimes an element of wishy-washiness to it, although the Queen of Swords probably not quite so much. And then, has that decisive, I'm strong with my words, I can be cutting. But where I might lack is that when I need to be called on to be practical, when I need to be called on to be, kind of to sort of set a routine, when I need to be called on to stand my ground, those might be the areas of challenge for that Queen of Swords card. And that comes from the shadow, the astrological shadow in the
Mm.
sign that precedes it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
100%. Yes, that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
So your challenges in that card sit in the card in the sign before it, which would be sort of the earthy Virgo like.
Mm. That makes a lot of sense.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Peter, for that psychological.
Well, no, look, you asked.
I did. I asked.
Um,
I'm putting it all on the
it's
line.
okay. We put it
Nothing
was
to hide
great.
here.
Actually, you want to talk about showing our vulnerability. We put each other on the spot, as far as interpretation goes, which we always think, look, we would tell you sometimes to do that when you got to learn, you got to put yourself out there. So, we're nothing. We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to put ourselves out there and ask ourselves questions that put ourselves in vulnerable positions, because we figure it helps us learn, and hopefully it helps you learn too. So, and hopefully today was helpful. No.
Yes, it certainly was for me.
Good, good. And like I said, if it was for you, put that in the comments below.
Mhm.
Give us a share, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you have questions that are specific, around today's topic or any other topic, please make sure that you let Bonnie and us know through the comments, through our email as well, which is included in the show
In the
notes.
show notes.
Bonnie, if not via email, not via the comments, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, which is breathewithbonnie.com. I am also on Instagram at breathewithbonnie. And when this episode airs, I will still have a couple of days left. I'm offering a intention setting workshop with the tarot. So it's called Tarot to Tranquility. So you'll be, if you sign up for the workshop, pulling some tarot cards, creating an intention based on what you've pulled, and then I will be guiding you through a yoga nidra meditation to help you plant the seeds of that new intention. So if you're interested in that, you will still have some time to sign up. That will I'll be hosting that on October the 2nd, and the information will be in the show notes, and you can go to my website to find out any information if that's something that interests you. And how about you, Peter? Where can people find you? Do you have any specials or anything going on right now?
Um, so you can find me at Peter White Tarot. So my website, that's peterwhitetarot.com. On Instagram and Facebook, that's just Peter White Tarot. No specials going on. Certainly things in the pipeline coming, hopefully coming in November, December. So the idea of planning 2025 using the tarot. And then early in 2025, a history of the tarot. So I do touch on the history of the tarot in my beginner's class, but I'm actually going to do a three-part, bit of a deeper dive into the history of the tarot. And of course, have already mentioned if you're looking for more information around how would you link astrology and the tarot, I really do break it down into the minor arcana and the major arcana and go into some pretty significant depth in both of those in my courses named, obviously, Learn the Tarot, the Major Arcana, and Learn the Tarot, the Minor Arcana. And you can check that out on my website as well. So hope to see you there.
Awesome. Well, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. It's always such a pleasure to connect with you. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave those for us. We absolutely love to hear from you. And until next time, we'll see you then.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.